Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday. This week has really flown by. I don't know about you, but I'm thrilled that it's Friday, and I'm even more excited to be joined by St. Supery today. I have a very special guest, their winemaker, Michael, who you are going to see in a moment. He's going to join us. Let me just invite him on. Oh, hello.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm great. Thanks, Emily. How are you?
Good. Oh my God, you're not in the same uniform you were in last time I saw you. I was just looking at our harvest pictures from 2016.
Oh, I know.
And you had that awesome harvest shirt with St. Supery over it, which I feel like if you work a day, you should get one of those shirts. I want to be a cool harvest kid.
Exactly right. Yeah, those shirts are kind of rare, and everyone tries to get a hold of one of those. And so you're absolutely correct, but it's all good. It's all good.
Well, and I'm pretty sure you guys were very nice to me. I'm pretty sure me coming in at 9 a.m., having a glass of rosé, and then doing a little bit of manual labor does not earn one of those shirts.
And a glass of rosé here.
Me too. Is that where we shall start?
We can do either way. Yeah, we can start with rosé if you like. Absolutely.
Well, whatever you want. I'm flexible. You're in charge. I'm just moderating and following along.
Absolutely, indeed. So we do this rosé, and so I don't know. I hope people out there might have a glass of rosé as we talk about it.
Yeah, those that are joining with a glass of the same Supery rosé, you can taste along to our tasting notes, and even if you're not, you can still learn and hear all about how special this rosé is that Michael and his team makes.
Absolutely. So yeah. So rosé is kind of cool. We do a really small blend of rosé every year. It's a fun wine to make. We'll get into St. Supery as we go along today and talk about the vineyards and what have you. But this rosé, we have 2 vineyards at St. Supery, and the rosé will have a piece of both of them in the wine. Of course, it's a state wine because everything we do is a state.
Of course, nothing but the best estate for St. Supery.
That's right, exactly right. So we make the wine from there. It's
this is the bottle, which is gorgeous, by the way. While you're talking, I'll be Vanna White.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. You're doing the modeling of the wine. I appreciate that. So, we make the wine from all of the varietals we use, obviously the red wine varietals, and we're at St. Supery. We are a Bordeaux house, or Bordeaux style house, and therefore we grow 5 red Bordeaux varietals, which are the main Bordeaux varietals.
Well, let's just say them in case people are new and might not know.
Sure. So King, of course, is Cabernet Sauvignon, which is the majority of what we grow. Then next is Merlot. We have a tiny bit of Cabernet Franc, a tiny bit of Malbec, and a tiny bit of Petit Verdot. And they're the 5 varietals. When it comes to red wine making, we can talk about it later if you want to. Those varietals have very key purposes in a blend as we use them. So what happens is as we go along in an effort to sort of make our red wines, we have an opportunity to draw juice off of those tanks and draw juice off from them pre-ferment, which we do. And when we draw the juice off, we draw it off with very little color. So the reason we're able to do that is because the color of pretty much all red wines is in the skins.
Right.
And if we draw that juice off very early after receiving the grapes, before the juice has left the rest in the skins, we can get that juice off without much color. And that's why it has the rosé sort of appearance and what have you. Every varietal will have a little bit of a flavor element to it. And so we bring those out. We sort of start to make those wines like it's a white wine almost. So we settle them and get them sort of clean pre-ferment. And they're a clarified juice, a bit like when you see orange juice in the store shelf. It has pulp in it. We let that settle out. We take the clean juice off the top, so it's very clean. We initiate it into a fermentation, and then we complete that fermentation. Then we blend all those components together to create this wine. Now, Cabernet.
It's such a beautiful color. One of our viewers is complimenting you on the color, and it's funny because I think in the glass it looks a little bit softer pink and a little bit more delicate than in the bottle. Because doesn't it look darker at the top, but then you put
Yes.
it next to it and it's a little lighter?
Yes, exactly. And you know what? Many rosé are incredibly pale and incredibly light, which is great, and I like that. But we sort of look to have a little more slightly darker approach, mainly because we like when it's just a touch darker than some of those other wines. I like the fact that it has a real purple, red sparkle to it on the table. So you put the bottle on the table, you get a light sort of shine through it, or the sunlight shine through it.
So I was reading up that you guys believe that rosé should be a year-round wine for the St. Supery guests. Correct. And so part of the reason you love this color is just to add that beauty to your table. Which, I mean, as someone that takes a lot of table shots and pictures of wine and food, I appreciate that, because you're right, it gets a little boring seeing all those dark bottles of like a Cabernet or a Pinot on the table in the middle of winter, and this is a great pop of color. Absolutely.
And so that's part of our drive for that is that. The other part we want, because to be an all-round wine, you need to be able to chill it in the summer and have it bright and refreshing, but you also in the winter, it's got to hang with some slightly heavier food situations. And so you want to blend this sort of myriad of opportunities, and therefore we want the wine to be a little richer. So to get that richness, we have to accept a little more color. And so that's what we do with our rosé. And it is a rosé. It's a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, some Merlot, some Cabernet Franc, Malbec, and a little Petit Verdot.
And it's dominantly Cab Sauv, I was reading, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty unique. I haven't had a lot of, I just wrote a favorite rosé post a couple months ago for National Rosé Day. And most of the rosés I was trying were rosé of Pinot. So this is pretty unique. Do you find a lot of people in Napa make a rosé of Cabernet?
Oh yeah, it's not uncommon, but listen, I guess where my drive comes from that is in Australia. I tasted as a young winemaker a lot of, I'm Australian if you haven't worked it out.
Well, I know we sort of skipped your background, so this is I've been like, oh shoot, we didn't talk about your background in St. Supery, so let's jump back, let's backwards. I guess we went straight to the beautiful rosé. I know you're Australian, but yeah, tell us about Australia, how it ties to the rosé, how you got into winemaking, because that's a really great connector.
Absolutely. So, and I'll just finish off the point. You know, some of the rosés I had when I was a young winemaker that I really enjoyed was a Cabernet rosé that was made by a company called Yolamba, which is a spectacular company, really, really fabulous winemakers and fabulous company. But it was a really outstanding wine because it had real zip to it. And so I've always remembered that, and therefore it became a part of my approach in winemaking and towards the end of this wine to create that. And Cabernet, when you take the rosé component of Cabernet, you are able to keep that zip and that vibrance in that wine, and it really brings a little bit of power to the forefront of the wine, along with maintaining the acidity, which is cool. Anyway, that's that. But
no, it has a really fresh smell. I'm trying to assess what I'm smelling. I just started WSET, so I'm like, literally, I've got my tasting card, and I'm always thinking like analytical. I can't enjoy a glass of wine anymore without thinking like, okay, I need 7 descriptor words.
Exactly. Well, you know, on the aromatics, I mean, aromatics are a precursor to flavor, and so you see a lot of that watermelon quality, a little bit of cranberry, a little bit of raspberry carrying on there. It's really it's opulent, it's quite lifted in the glass.
I love the watermelon descriptor, and it's very rare I get to use that word describing a wine.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super nice, and I think it almost softens. I poured these about 30 minutes ago, and I think from like when we first tasted it at 4:01 to now, it's like lightening up a little bit. I might like it a little bit longer as it sits in the glass and opens up. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that indeed. And it is. It's fun, it's vibrant, it's opulent, and it's fresh, and it's got a little acid zip to it, which in summer, we're sitting here in summer right now with the vineyard behind us. You need to have a little acid zip, and when you chill your wine, keep it bright, keep it fresh and opulent. It's cool. Yeah.
Well, especially on a hot summer day. I imagine the weather in Napa's a little bit warmer than here in San Francisco. How lovely is it up there? Make us all jealous.
Listen, actually, it's a spectacular day.
I know. It always is. Whenever I do these Instagram lives, I'm looking in the vineyards and the blue skies, and I was like, why don't I live in Napa or Sonoma? But, well, so let's get back to Australia. So that's very cool. So you grew up in Australia, and every time you say zip, I think of a kangaroo. So how did, every time you say zip, I'm thinking of kangaroos. I don't know why. Yes. So how did you get into winemaking, and how did you end up in Napa from Australia?
Fair point. Fair question. So I crazy. I'm Australian. I'm sitting here on a porch at St. Supery in Napa. I grew up on a big old family vineyard in the Barossa Valley of Australia. And if some of you may know, but if you don't, the Barossa Valley in Australia is kind of like the Napa Valley of Australia.
Okay.
It's one of the oldest districts of Australia. It's the most renowned district of Australia. Of course, renowned for different varietals. Has more of a Rhone varietal focus than Bordeaux. But that's where I grew up. And so as a kid, if I wanted to head out and earn pocket money, I would have to go out and sort of dig holes, pound posts, plant vines, prune vines. That's what I would do. And then I'd grab my pocket money, then I'd go in and I'd play on the football team and be able to buy myself a pie and a pasty for lunch.
So was your father a winemaker then?
No, my father was a doctor, but his friends were winemakers. In fact, my father's one of his very, very best friends, and also happened to be a second cousin, was a gentleman called Peter Lehman. Peter Lehman was actually the most famous winemaker of Australia.
Well, that's easy to remember. It's like Peter Mondavi. I'll never forget Peter Lehman.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and, Peter Lehman.
Peter Lehman was called the Baron of the Barossa. He was a legend in Australia, and until he died, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. But I grew up around him and what have you. My father was very much involved with winemakers and friends and what have you. But he was a grape grower essentially, and so I grew up on the big old family farm. And I was fortunate growing up there, and I'm still fortunate today because we still farm that property today. And it just so happens that property was settled by my great grandfather.
Wow!
He was the first settler, and so I'm actually 6th generation on that farm in Australia. And it was settled in 1845. It's one of the last, very few Barossa Valley estates where the title has never changed hands since the original settlement. It's a pretty remarkable place.
So who's going to pass it on? Is there a 7th generation? And if so, are they in Napa, or are they going to be in Australia passing it on?
So I have a brother as well, and so he and I have kids here. I have kids here, of course, as 7th generation, but they're not there. But he has kids; they're 7th generation. So yes, it continues on. We continue to farm it. So my brother and I actually continue to farm it. He's there day in, day out. I just happen to be there a couple of times a year to deal with things.
Well, you could do harvest at both, couldn't you? Because it's opposite cycles.
I could, however, I tend to be fairly busy.
I've seen you during harvest. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, because I mean, I hear of a lot of people in the United States, as they're like developing their resume, they try to do as many harvests. You don't need to do that because you've been doing this so long, but that could be fun to go back one year and do it at the.
Oh, that was that. Yeah. I mean, that's where I started. I started making wine there, so that's where I cut my teeth. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So, and I have a great affinity for it. But I've been in Napa for so long now that I have an incredible affinity, incredible love for Napa. Yeah. Napa's an amazing place. So I had a good.
You have the best of both worlds.
And I had good fortune, just that I was able to grow up on that farm and really learn viticulture before I chose to go into winemaking, which has been a real benefit for me, I think personally, because this is what I do at St. Supery. I look after viticulture and winemaking. And I think, to be an excellent winemaker, you need to be an excellent viticulturist. Because if you understand vines, you understand farms, that allows you to have a vision of how to grow those grapes to make the best wines. And at the end of the day, the potential of the wines we're going to make are as good as the potential of the day you harvest the grapes. Because what you've done on that day, all you can do then is the best you can do with the grapes of that day. So really, a big task of great winemaking is great grape growing. And so that was really served me well, that old history I had there and what have you, in the vineyards and so forth. So I mean, which I'm very grateful for, really.
Yeah.
And I also love being in the farm too.
Yeah, it's interesting because the more I talk to winemakers and get to know all this, I mean, everybody says the same thing. It's like cooking. It's like you can't cook a great recipe with awful ingredients. So what you guys do on the farm is so important. And obviously having all estate grapes, that gives you a lot more control because you know everything that's happening. Even if you're managing a vineyard you're leasing from, there's still stuff that maybe happens that someone doesn't see.
Of course. And we should talk about that as our estate programs and what have you.
Yeah.
And estate sort of means here in the US, that estate means that your wines are produced from your own vineyards or vineyards you control. So it means you control them, you manage them, you make the decisions of how you grow those grapes, and you take those grapes, you bring them to your cellar, you vinify them and turn them into wine, you barrel age them, and then you bottle them, and you all maintain them all within that vineyard to facility situation. And that you don't bring any grapes in from any outside sources. You don't buy grapes, you don't have any grapes come in for any reason. It's all from your properties and your properties alone. So when you buy a bottle of St. Supery, you can be assured that that wine, year by year by year, comes from the same blocks, the same vines, the same plants all the time.
Yeah.
So that's what estate means. And at St. Supery, we are exactly that. We have 2 vineyards, and we own our properties and we manage our properties. We farm them in the same fashion, manage them in the same fashion year by year. So we keep this incredible consistency. And it's a bit of an old world model. If you think about the Bordeaux clos, where they have a little vineyard within a wall, and you go and you visit the property, you buy their wine. Every year they make one wine. It comes from that one block every single year. And this is the same sort of model we do. So we have the 2 vineyard properties at St. Supery. Everything comes from those. We have the Rutherford Estate and the Dollarhide Ranch. And Rutherford Estate is a spectacular place. And if you were to visit us, this is where you come to. It's where I'm sitting on the porch right now.
Okay.
In the background.
That's where I've been. I don't think I've been to Dollarhide Ranch yet.
No, maybe not. But the Dollarhide Ranch, it's kind of pretty spectacular place.
Well, the Sauvignon Blanc from there, it's funny. I don't drink a lot of Sauvignon Blanc. I don't know. I just sort of forget about it. But like, I've had yours consistently over the years, and I always love it. It's like one of the few I'm like, oh, yes.
Exactly.
Well, should we sip on the Sauvignon Blanc while we're talking about it?
Let's do that, yeah.
Cheers.
So, absolutely, cheers.
Oh, God, that smells so amazing. Like the citrus and grapefruit and lemon.
So this wine is the Dollarhide Sauvignon Blanc. So Sauvignon Blanc is incredibly important to us at St. Supery for our white wine program. We make 3 different Sauvignon Blancs. That's it there, right there. And we also make a Bordeaux white style of blend as well. So we're very much sold on Sauvignon Blanc, and Sauvignon Blanc is an incredibly important part of our vineyards and what have you. I mean, at St. Supery, surprisingly enough, we grow something in the vicinity of 7 or 8% of all acres of Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc. We have a great.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We have a tremendous commitment to it.
That's a lot. So how many cases, or how much Sauvignon Blanc are you making?
Well, we grow quite a lot, you know. So Emily,
I don't know what 8% of what is, but that's a lot. So I'm not the only one that loves your Sauvignon Blanc. Moral of the story.
What's kind of happened over years is that Sauvignon Blanc ground has been lost a little in Napa to grow more Cabernet Sauvignon. So one thing is the base is reduced, therefore our percentage has increased. But also we've got a pretty good commitment to it. I mean, our Dollarhide Ranch is a big ranch. It's a 1,500 acre property with 500
1,500 acres?
And 500 acres planted to vineyard.
Wow.
So it's a little bit of cowboy country. It's pretty wild and pretty fun to go to. And so... Do
you guys have an SUV that when you go there you drive around on?
I do. I have a lot of things. We have 7
Oh my
lakes.
God. Okay. Well, if I
property.
Come back, I think we should do a visit to Dollarhide Ranch. You and me.
Yeah, yeah. We do all sorts of things. We do with SUVs. We can go and have a look at things. We can look at vineyards. We can see bird life. We can see wildlife. You get everything from, you won't see them, but everything from mountain lion to bears to
I don't think I can handle
jackrabbits. I mean, we got 7 lakes. We can even go fishing. It's incredible. Catch and release.
This is in Rutherford.
No, this is the Dollarhide Ranch. It's not in Rutherford. No.
Oh, where is it?
This is in Napa. It's it's about a 30-minute drive from the Rutherford location.
Okay, I was like, wow, you've got 5 lakes in Rutherford? It must be hiding, and I don't know where they are.
Yeah, no, it's on the backside of Hell Mountain. So.
Behind Hell Mountain.
Yeah, indeed. Oh. So in that sort of vicinity, and so, but we got 7 lakes in the property. Yeah, we can fish and catch and release.
I forgot. Laura obviously needs to come on and visit with us, and probably Misty. We've got a whole entourage that should join us on this cowboy expedition. Well, and I mean, don't get me started on Hell Mountain. I have a sweet spot for Hell Mountain Cabernet. So if any visit involves going near Hell Mountain to the Dollarhide Ranch, it just keeps getting better.
Yeah. We're not on Hell Mountain. We're close to Hell Mountain.
Yeah.
So we're on the backside. But you're right. It's a great part of the world. It's absolutely fantastic. And yes, well worth a visit if you have an opportunity. It's really cool. It was actually the Dollarhide Ranch, an interesting name. It was named after a guy that owned it. If you ever look at the old maps, the Mexican land grant maps, you can actually find.
I think I have an old map behind me of San Francisco, but I don't think it's the Mexican land map.
But if you look at one of those, you will actually find Dollarhide listed on those maps. And the property was owned by an old cowboy called Andrew Jackson Dollarhide.
Oh, what a cool name!
He was renowned for breaking horses and selling to the 49ers during the gold rush. And so he did a lot of that. So he was a cattle rancher, a horse trader, a horse dealer, maybe a little bit of a hustler. I'm not really sure, but interesting dude and a cowboy. And so when you go to the Dollarhide Ranch, it's like being in Napa Valley.
Well, what do you mean when I go? When we go?
Yeah, when we go to the Dollarhide Ranch, absolutely. It's like being a little bit of cowboy country in the Napa Valley. It's incredible.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really good. Fun.
Yeah, it's funny because, it sounds like when I think of cowboy and Napa, I automatically think of Calistoga, but I guess the Dollarhide Ranch as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Sauvignon Blanc, let's chat about this.
Yes, and there's a lot of soil stories that I would love to talk about.
Oh yeah, listen, we've got quite a lot of variation in soils there. I mean, let's face it, we have a 500-acre planting of vineyard on that property alone. That's quite significant in Napa Valley. We're very fortunate at St. Supery to be an old brand that has some tremendous viticultural assets, and those vineyards are just brilliant vineyards. They're just magnificent vineyards. So we'll talk about Sauvignon Blanc. So this is the Dollarhide Sauvignon Blanc. We make several Sauvignon Blancs. This particular wine incorporates a little bit of barrel fermentation. It actually comes from some of our oldest, most powerful Sauvignon Blanc blocks. It's a very important wine to us. It's a small blend that we make. Way back when Robert Scully, who established St. Supery, planted his first Sauvignon Blanc grapes, he planted the block that we call Parcel 5. And so those vines were planted in 1987. And so they have become the heart and soul of this wine, of this Sauvignon Blanc. And for whatever reason, we were fortunate to get a very unique selection of Sauvignon Blanc that has tremendous grapefruit, tremendous green lime, tremendous citrus qualities about it, and a very powerful aromatic and flavor profile, which has been brilliant.
The grapefruit nose on this is absolutely stunning. Like sometimes when I have a Sauv Blanc and it's just so beautiful, but it's like light and delicate on the nose.
Really pretty.
Is anybody else sipping and smelling along with us? Because I would love if you share anything you guys are smelling on your nose. As much as I want to just talk to Michael all day by myself, I might have to share them with you. So let us know what you guys are tasting at home. And by the way, if you didn't really get your wines in order before the tasting, no big deal. You can still buy them. This was such a great deal. It was like $130 for these 3 wines. Yeah. And there's a whole landing page on St. Supery's website. Just Google St. Supery Jet Setting Fashionista. And this video is going to live on my IGTV. So anybody that missed this, that wants to get the wine and drink it at home later and hear Michael's commentary, you are welcome to do that. And it's funny because one of my friends yesterday was like, "Oh my God, St. Supery, I love their Sauv Blanc." I'm like, "Well, I don't know if you can get it at 6 p.m. for tomorrow, but you can get it after the fact."
Right, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, no, listen, if you can get a hold of the wines, please do. I mean, we love sharing our wines with everyone, and that's what it's all about. That's what winemaking's all about, is to try to do a great job, make some great wines, but most importantly, share them with consumers and guests and what have you. So please grab some if you can. But look, this wine here is, we make a couple of Sauvignon Blancs. I make one that's more in the Southern Hemisphere type of style. It's a California wine, but we respect that style. This wine here is a bit different. We do a little bit of barrel fermentation. So when I say a little, what we do is we tank ferment a little over 80% of the blend. And what the tank fermentation does, it retains natural acids. It retains fruit opulence, retains, Emily, the grapefruit you're talking about, that little bit of lime quality. But then we take the other 1/5 of the blend and we put it into barrels, new French oak barrels for fermentation. So that part fermented barrel, those barrels have got this really sort of seductive, toasty, sort of charry quality, which with Sauvignon Blanc I love. And so we ferment there, and then we leave it on its yeast leaves for about 5 months, and that's called sur-lie maturation. And so what that
is giving it that creamy, rich flavor. Exactly
right. And a little more textural feel, a little more volume and feel. It depletes the fruit down a little, brings the fruit down, but it gives more complexity. And then we take the component in the tank, After 5 months, we blend them together to create this wine. It's a really interesting Sauvignon Blanc and a really fun wine to make. And so that's what we're doing here with this. And that creates what you talked about. That's got that beautiful grapefruit nose, which is directly from the vineyard. A little bit of that pear you mentioned earlier, which is a slight contribution from the surly maturation, that slight creaminess you see, to create this wine. And in the background, you don't have a lot of oak, but there's a very subtle thread of that seductive toasted oak in the very background. And
it's funny, I don't notice the oak, but I don't notice that overpower bright citrus Sauv Blanc you get from stainless steel. Correct. Which by deduction should make me realize, oh, there's no stainless steel, so it's got to be, little oak.
Correct. And so and you're absolutely right. So the acids don't go away; they become less apparent when you incorporate that surly maturation, and that oak that comes into it gives a little more fatness, a little more texture to it. But on this, the barrels I particularly use for this wine, like I say, it's got this really seductive sort of charry quality, and it's really subtle. It's really in the background, but it's kind of cool.
So I'm noticing that acidity is staying in my mouth quite a bit. Would you give this like a medium plus acidity?
Yeah, I think it's got good acid. It's crisp, but it's not overtly crisp. It's
no, it's very like gentle. It's not too much, but it you know how you're supposed to like count how long it's in your mouth. I'm counting, and it's a while. Yeah. So what would you pair this with? Because I know another thing about St. Supery, for those, I'd love if people can comment who has been to St. Supery. I've been, 3 or 4 times. And one of my favorite things that I always remember when I come, you have that chalkboard at the top of the stairs that you have everybody's names. And it's like, welcome, Emily. I think mine said Emily, the jet-setting fashionista, which always makes me chuckle. And you have like an amazing on-site chef. So what would your chef pair with this Sauvignon Blanc? Because I'm sure he's done it quite a bit.
Well, I'll tell you what, he's much smarter than me. He's incredible. Our chef, Todd, he's just an amazing chef. He makes our wine shine because he can really pair a lot of different options. But if you ask me, something that I love to pair with this wine is halibut with a lemon caper sauce.
Ooh, yum.
Crust sort of thing. Or over top of it, which is kind of cool, and I love that. But halibut with that sort of lemon caper sauce is really fantastic. Love it, fantastic.
Oh, look at this, Sarah! We love you. She's been to St. Supery 3 times, and it's her favorite winery in Napa.
Ah, thank you. Fantastic.
Oh my God, I
appreciate that.
I love hearing comments and feedback like that. Yeah, well, Sarah, I hope you are drinking the wines with us, and if not, no worries. You can get them after the fact and have your own little party with us in the background, and you can fast forward what you don't want to listen to. Wow. Oh, and BRS loves it. The tasting room. He had his 50th birthday there. He turns 64 next Wednesday. Well, I think you better have a 64th St. Supery party.
Cool.
Oh, fantastic. This is so fun. It's so fun hearing all the stories. We got a wine club member. Yeah, well, I don't want to rush the Sauv Blanc, but you tell me when you're ready for the cab. I pre-poured everything, so I'm ready whenever you are. We can always revisit.
No. You're all good. You're all good. I mean, listen, we make a bunch of wines, and but we're very focused on what we do. Like I said, we're very much a Bordeaux style focus. So if you think about Sauvignon Blanc is one of the Bordeaux white varietals. We actually we're not tasting it here today, but we also make a blend, which we call Vertu, which is interesting because it's a Semillon Sauvignon Blanc blend. That's super interesting wine.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of different whites that we do. And we talked about the Rosé earlier, which uses the 5 Bordeaux reds, of course, what have you. So let's roll on.
In case anybody missed it, this is the beautiful Rosé that we started with.
Yeah.
A Rosé mostly of Cab Sauv, really of the 5 Bordeaux varietals, and the color is just so lovely. I'm having, lucky for my friends, I'm having like 3 friends over after, so we're having a St. Supery garden party.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, it's summer night. I've got beautiful wines open. Why not?
Exactly right. Exactly.
We'll all sit like 4 feet apart. A COVID party,
As you do, as we do. That's a sign of the times. That's what we have to do.
So speaking of COVID,
we've got to keep it.
Oh, those are so cute. I wish I got one. We could have worn them together and done an unveiling.
Right.
Speaking of COVID, I know you guys have reopened and you have some outdoor experiences. Can you just give us a little bit of an intro to what you guys are offering for those of our viewers that want to watch and come visit?
Sure. So So we're fortunate that we have quite a large outdoor seating area. We can't allow anyone inside, of course, as part of the current protocols. But our outdoor seating area is quite expansive, and fortunately, we're able to use that. So we have educators on site, and we take tastings by appointment. And we've got tremendous separation between the tables we have, because we have this little expansive sort of outdoor
Yeah, it's like
area.
a patio. You almost feel like you're like at a restaurant patio. It's great.
It's a very French sort of feel, because we have this decomposed granite sort of location area, which is normally used for a bocce ball court or petanque court. So we've taken those courts out, and we just put the tables there. Yeah. And it's really, really cool. It's got this sort of old world sort of feel about the whole place. It's kind of
well, I'm actually heading up to Napa in August for a couple days. I'm hoping to be staying with a friend, and I will come in, and I can't wait to experience that. I mean, maybe we'll do that in our Dollar Hide tour, hopefully together, but I'm sure August you're busy with harvest, so the Dollar Hide visit might have to be after harvest. But yeah, I would love to come and see it, because I think it's really important for people to understand what it's like, and it's perfectly safe to taste during COVID. I wrote a blog post about it, and all the wineries are doing such a good job. There's Purell everywhere. Everyone's keeping their distance. Are you guys pre-pouring the wine, so when people sit down, it's already poured?
So we will pre-pour wines. We'll have actually educators come to the table. We'll have them talk to you about the wines. We'll give you different experiences depending on the opportunity you'd like to have. Our chef does food pairings with them, with some of these, depending on which of the choices you might choose. You do need to book in advance, though.
Okay. We had someone saying they're trying to get a reservation. Well, get that reservation.
Yeah, you do need to book in advance. We do need you to let us know.
I mean, and that's pretty typical for Napa. I mean, usually I would never go anywhere in Napa without a reservation. But obviously during COVID, there's less availability, so people need to plan.
During COVID, we have to be diligent about how many people we have on site at one time. We need to be diligent about maintaining separation and distancing. Of course, everyone needs to arrive wearing masks. And
Now, are you guys? I know that the team, I was going to say, are you dog friendly? I know you're dog friendly, because when I was there for harvest, there was all these adorable dogs there. Can people bring their dogs for the outside experience?
At the moment, no. We are a dog friendly house, but because of the COVID situation and some concerns with pets, we've had to put that to a halt for the minute, reluctantly, because I'm a dog friendly guy.
No, you guys love dogs. I mean, my whole blog post.
I've got a dog that I bring to work with me every day.
Yeah.
But I can't let him out to run around at the moment because of just the situation.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It makes me sad, but that's the reality. So we are anxious to get back to being pet friendly, because we are a pet friendly house.
Yep. Well, I think the most important thing is that you're open and people can visit you. So if the dogs have to sit out the visit for a few months, they'll be okay. A little bit.
And as soon as we feel we can change that, we're going to do that, because we want them all here. It's all fun.
And what about the length of reservations? Are you guys capping it at like 60 or 90 minutes to keep the turnaround?
Yeah, so I don't know that we're capping it per se, but we are trying to maintain a fairly sort of disciplined approach towards our tastings, and you've got a window with which you can arrive and leave and what have you.
Perfect.
But call in and check in with it, because I don't always know all those details.
Okay. Well, Claudita, give them a call. I mean, what I did experience, I was at some wineries in Sonoma, and they said they had a ton of inbound interest. So I think the wineries are, there's a lot of demand to visit. We're all anxious to get there and support you guys. And then I think just like being polite and giving someone else a chance, I don't think people are, it's not like the old days where you could just camp out as a wine club member for 5 hours and never leave, because then, things are a little different right now.
Yeah, the world has changed quite a lot, and so we're all trying.
But we will get back to those days once we have a vaccine, and then people can camp out all they want.
Yes, and so we look forward to that. But in the meantime, I guess.
Yep. Exactly.
So should we talk about Cabernet?
I was just about to reach for my glass. Sounds great.
Indeed. So we have a really cool wine here.
Here it is.
We call this the Dollar Hide Elevation.
Okay.
So the Dollar Hide Elevation is a unique wine, and so Emily's got it there. So it's a pretty cool wine. This is the vintage 2014, and this is from the Dollar Hide Ranch. So it's a vineyard designate wine. Like I said, we have two properties. We have the Rutherford Estate, which is where I'm sitting right now, and then we have the Dollar Hide Ranch. This is we call it the Elevation. It's a unique blend. So this is a wine that we blend little Malbec into, which is quite interesting. So at the ranch, we have a lot of old vineyards. So when I say old, vineyards that are 35, even maybe more older than that, and they're great wines. And we typically sort of put those in a wine called the Dollar Cabernet. This wine here will generally have a little piece of that, but also some of our 16, 15 to 20-year-old vines involved to create the blend. And they're vines that have great maturity and great density, but some more recent vineyard design, which can be really interesting, and more recent sort of selection, plant material selection, which is interesting. So we do that, but along with that, while that's where the Cabernet comes from. We actually do blend generally not about 10% of Malbec into this wine. That's quite unique. This particular vintage had 8% of Malbec.
Okay.
It always has a bit of Malbec in the Cabernet. Now, Cabernet.
What does the Malbec do? Like, why is it not 100% Cab?
Well, we actually do make 100% Cabernet, but this wine we try to make unique in a certain fashion. So let me try to explain that a little. What happens is Cabernet is big, bold, and robust. And this Dollarhide Ranch is a mountain estate. Remember, it's a high elevation estate. So in a high elevation estate, you typically get more structural feel, more textural feel. You feel the tannin and what have you. Your question is pertinent, Emily, in the fact that what does Malbec bring to it? Well, Malbec for us, now remember, Malbec in Argentina is different than California. But for us, on our estate, Malbec brings very dark, juicy fruit. So real dark plum sort of quality fruit. And even after 2 years in barrel, the Malbec comes out looking youthful and juicy and full of vive and life and what have you. It also carries very good acidity for us. And so what the Malbec does is it brings a little bit of that vive to your Cabernet, a little bit of that life, and that acidity brings a little zip to the wine. But Malbec overall is really youthful after 2 years, where Cabernet gets more complex. So by bringing that in, brings a little more of that youth, a little more of that zip, and because Malbec is softer in its tannin on our location, it softens that slightly robust tannin that Cabernet can have. So while the tannin doesn't go away, the structure doesn't go away, it's all there. This Malbec can round it out and bring a more gentle completion to the wine, make the wine just a little more charming, even though it's a big, bold, robust Cabernet. Yeah. So that's what it does, yeah.
It sounds like it serves its purpose and is doing a great job softening it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the wine...
So, good question. Me and JL Stigger, I was just about to ask you, so if the Malbec is softening it up, it's probably making it drinkable a little earlier. Yes. If you didn't have the Malbec in here, you'd probably want to sit on it a little longer if it was like a Cabernet. And one of our viewers is asking, how many years should these stay in the cellar?
So, great question. Always a difficult question to answer for a winemaker, because there's no silver bullet answer to that. But what I will tell you is that the Malbec does give it an earlier drinking window. So if you like your wines young and vibrant and fresh, because the Malbec slightly rounds the grain of tannin a touch, the earlier window becomes a little earlier, which is good, but it has great longevity. So this wine's going to have probably a 12, 15-year life, maybe a 20-year life. I will tell you that just a couple of nights ago with my daughter, I opened in 1998, not an Elevation, but a different wine. The majority comes from this property, and it was spectacular. So when I say 15 to 20 years, how old is that? That 1998 is older than 20 years, and it would drank great. It was fantastic. So,
well, was there an occasion, or just because you had it and you were in the mood to try it out?
It actually was about the birth year of my daughter.
Oh, I was wondering. I was like, what was that? That's great.
Yeah. So she's home at the moment. In fact, she's
there.
She's actually helping at St. Supery today. Believe it or
not.
not.
That's nice. Yeah. Well, maybe we should invite her on our excursion. She sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, she is.
She's old, I mean, I guess she's old enough to drink. 98. I don't know how old she is.
She's 22? Old enough to drink, but she actually just graduated from college, and she's about to leave and start her first job, which is very exciting.
Well, that's exciting. Where's she going?
So she got a job in Portland, Oregon. So she went to the University of Oregon and studied business there, and now she's got a job in Portland, Oregon.
Great.
So, which is fortunate.
Yeah, she's lucky to have a job. I was just in Oregon's wine country about 2 weeks ago, and holy moly, I'm going back. I'm such a sucker. I fall in love with wine country wherever I go, but it's cool.
So, wine country is a good place to be, because wherever there's wine, there's good food.
Yeah.
Good
And
wine, good food. It's not
like
it's not such a bad thing.
Oregon wine country makes me feel like what Sonoma Pie was 20 years ago. I mean, Napa's a little bit, further evolved and different,
Yes.
but the Oregon vibe was super laid back and there was all this farming. I was like, I thought it would be all vineyards. It was not all vineyards.
No, I think you're right. It is what Sonoma probably was, and like you say, Napa's a little different. But Napa's kind of unique. They're very different than Sonoma, of course. Napa has got a very defined valley, very narrow valley, very high mountains on each side, quite unique. But you go to somewhere like Oregon, it's quite spectacular.
Yeah.
To walk around their vineyards and have that old farm feel as well as that new vineyard feel. And where I grew up in the Barossa Valley in Australia, it's a lot like that. It's a lot like that sort of feel.
Well, if I'm going to hopefully make it to Portland one of these days, and maybe I'll let you know and take your daughter out for a drink, because I don't know anybody there. So it's always funny when you're traveling alone. You're like, I mean,
she'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Now that she's allowed to go to a bar and have a drink, absolutely. If they open the bars.
Just in their job. I mean, who doesn't want to be taken out for a drink by some random blogger that's written about her dad?
Of course. That's right.
Well, good. Well, back to the Cabernet. I shouldn't call it the Cabernet, but the 92% Cabernet, 8% Merlot. It's really lovely and so drinkable.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it can age longer, that's what's so tricky. I agree with your answer. It's like you open it now and you're like, well, this is really great and I'm still enjoying this. But then in 2 years, it'll just evolve into something different.
Yeah. You know, it's a great education. What I think is a great education when it comes to aging of red wines is to buy a case of one wine and put it in your cellar and open a bottle today and wait 2 years and open another bottle and wait 2 years and open another bottle and keep doing that down the track. Or you can do it every year even, if you like. It's a great opportunity to see how a red wine evolves if cellared correctly.
Yeah.
And so, I do that. I still do that.
That's a great idea. Nobody's ever told me to do that.
Yeah, but if you are so inclined to buy a case of wine at one time, do that. Put it in your cellar. Just make sure it's stored well, and then check it out every year, because you really truly see how that wine does evolve and how it changes. And it's a tremendous education, and I think it makes me appreciate wine a little bit more every time I do that.
Really good takeaway. So Michael, I think I just realized I don't have an interview with you on my blog, so I'm going to be following up with the team, but I'd love to add an interview with you. And
sure.
One of my questions is going to be like, what's your best wine tasting tip? Because I know what yours is, and I love that.
Well, that's a great tip. I mean, that's one of my tips that I think. Because,
there's more.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that people often ask how long this wine will age, and there's not a sign at the back of the bottle that say it's going to be it'll be too late on this date. There is no such thing as that, because wines evolve gently and slowly, and does get to be a point where some wines get past it. But if a Napa Valley Cabernet is made well, it has an awfully long drinking window, and what's more than that is as you watch it age, it gets more and more interesting. It's really kind of fun thing to see.
Especially if you're like chronologically tasting it every 2 years. I mean, a case that would take 24 years?
Yep, absolutely.
Or that's pretty cool.
And if you don't have the patience, do it every year.
Another fun fact somebody told me is like, I think a winemaker, they were like, oh, I have a couple cases of wine for the year this kid was born. And I'm like, I wish I love my parents, but they're not winemakers. I wish they did that, because I mean, how cool. Or then they like have a case at the wedding from your birth year.
Yes.
I do remember when I was at Opus, like your neighbor, I was at Opus One, and I was looking at the bottle for the year I was born, and I was thinking, I'm like, oh my God, if I got to try this. But that'll be my new quirky media request. Can I try a sip of this vintage?
Well, I tell you what, it's interesting you say that, because that's a really unique thing. I was fortunate to be in Bordeaux. One of our parent company that owns St. Supery actually has a couple of Bordeaux properties, and at a property called Chateau Canon.
Can we say who your parent company is? Because I love the brand.
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. So our parent company is Chanel, and so a great
fabulous parent to have.
Great people, fantastic people, and they've been fun to work with. And they own a couple of properties in Bordeaux, and so I was at one of the properties, a property called Chateau Canon, in 2016. And they took me for a walk down the stairs into the cellar. Now, I will tell you, the cellar walks down into an underground cave. And the cave was actually created way back in in centuries and centuries ago by the mining of the limestone to build this old city of St. Emilion, which is remarkable. And now you can go down these stairs, and the stairs go from the cellar, keep going down until you end up in that cavern, which is underneath the vineyard, which is remarkable in itself. But on the way, you get to walk through a cellar full of wines. And as you walk through the wines, you march down a sign that illustrates the vintage of those wines. And I walk down, and I walk past the vintage of my father. And I walk beyond that, and way down into the 1800s. Even.
Oh my gosh.
It was incredible.
Wait, and so each year there's like wines stored from that year?
Yeah.
They still, holy cow. Well, this is good to know because I was planning to go, you said Bordeaux, right?
Correct.
Well, they're on my bucket list to return to that region because, I mean, I haven't been in 10 years. So that sounds like a winery that is a must-see if they're open to the public and or media. It's
a spectacular location.
Yeah. It sounded a little bit like the caves. Have you been to the Gruyères in Champagne?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. It reminded me of like Runart, where you just keep going lower and lower, and it's so cool.
I mean, they're incredible too.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. It's like a great glass of wine, a fabulous winemaker. I could just talk for hours. Unfortunately, Instagram does cut us off after an hour, which is so crazy.
Oh, well. We'll have to do it again another time.
We will have to do it again.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure, I mean, we have a little bit more time, but so I also think a really important thing that I want to make sure the viewers hear about is you guys are offering virtual tastings, correct?
We are doing some virtual tastings, so you can come on live. We're doing every week, and we have some series. Often there's 6-week series.
Yeah.
We're really fortunate. We have a chef here, Chef Todd. Chef Todd is incredible.
Yeah.
And he comes on and does virtual tastings with us. So when we do our tastings, we very much, of course, talk about wine, and we very much talk about what we do at St. Supery, and we'll often focus on one wine for one week. But Chef Todd will actually come on and do an entire cooking demonstration that will work with our wines, and he makes our wines look even better, which is fabulous. And he is just an incredible chef, does amazing stuff, and the virtual tastings are really, really fun. If you were inclined, you can get involved with those virtual tastings. And when we do a 6-week series, you can actually buy a 6-pack of wine from us, which is one wine for every week. And therefore, when we do the virtual tasting, you can have a bottle of that wine at home with you.
That's perfect.
For that 6-week period. And we did a bunch of virtual tastings up front for 6 weeks. Then we did a sustainable seafood tour. We brought on chefs from other restaurants around the country. We brought on fishermen. We were even had a guy on a lobster boat on a virtual tasting talking to us about his sustainable lobster fishing and what have you.
Yeah.
It was incredible, and he was he was on his boat off of Little Cranberry Island on the east coast.
I was going to say that's Maine, right? Lobster.
Yeah.
So which wine did you pair? Did you make a Chardonnay? I can't remember.
We might have done this
or like the Sauvignon white blend.
That on that week, I can't actually recall. Well, yeah, I think we did Dollarhide Sauvignon Blanc with that on that week, which was fantastic. So that was really, really, really cool. But so we do some fun stuff.
You really do. I mean, I get your emails, and I've been following your programming, and well, now I'm excited. I'm excited to nail down my Napa dates and plan a visit to come to the al fresco patio dining and hopefully have one of, obviously, your wines and one of Todd's delicious pairings.
Yeah, absolutely. Check it out. We can talk about, one of the things I haven't told you about is about our vineyards. We talked about our vineyards being a sort of St. Supery an estate brand, which is very, very important to us, and we very, very much follow that to the T because we think it's important. It maintains consistency for us in the fact that our wines come from the same blocks, the same plants year by year, but also we manage the vineyard the same. So what that means is, from an estate brand perspective, the only variation we get is Mother Nature. And Mother Nature is indicated by your date stamp in your bottle, which is your vintage. So every bottle is date stamped with that vintage, and that vintage is a unique story. Other than that, we are very consistent of how we go and what we do. The other thing that's interesting about our property is that we are certified Napa Green.
I was going to say, let's talk about that beautiful certification.
Yeah. So if you look at the little tags in the back of the bottle there, it says certified Napa Green land and certified Napa Green winery. So what that means is we are a sustainable farmer. So we do farm everything we can to be earth friendly and ensure that we're going to maintain our lands for the next generation to come and keep them in the best condition we can so we can pass those on from generation to generation. So we take that very seriously, and we do everything we can to be as close as best a good farm.
What are some examples of what you're doing? Are you like using natural pesticides or no pesticides? Like, what do you have to do to qualify for that?
So we do a lot of things. We have to be reaccredited in the vineyard every 5 years.
Okay.
And even when we achieve our Napa Green certification, the next time they come to reassess us, we actually have to be doing an enhanced job from the previous time.
Oh, wow.
So every time you're recertified, you need to be doing more than you were the previous time, even though you were qualified the previous time. And similarly in the winery, same sort of situation. Wow. So in the vineyards, what we do is we do a lot of things. We maintain natural wildlife corridors, so we're trying to maintain a lot of beauty. As I said, the Dollarhide Ranch is a 1,500-acre ranch, but only 500 acres is planted.
Wow!
They have an enormous amount of natural cover, natural wildlife approach, and corridors through the property to allow wildlife to maintain the sort of their situation. We have a massive bird-life migratory pattern that comes through through our lakes, but we have one particular lake that's quite enormous, and we actually have the Audubon Society come in once a year to actually do a bird count.
The what society?
Audubon Society. So they do a bird count every year.
Oh, wow!
Which is kind of unique. So on our property, we're one of the locations they count that.
Can you imagine having that job counting birds? Ooh, that sounds hard.
I know. So and then from a farming point of view, so we farm to try to limit erosion, so that's a very important part of Napa Green. What happens when you have erosion is soil gets washed into rivers and watersheds, and if they get washed into watersheds, you start to affect marine life in a negative fashion. So part of what we do is erosion control to avoid that ever getting to the streams. And we do have a river that runs through our property out there. So that's very, very important.
What don't you have at this ranch? It sounds super. Is there a little cabin like for s'mores and a fire pit with some Cabernet?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. It sounds like a great spot for team excursions.
Oh yeah, we actually farm it in a diversified fashion. So we try to take a little bit of leaf out of that old-fashioned farm, where a family might be on a farm in that old sort of fashioned era, and they'd have diversified farming. Their main core may be one industry. Like for us, it's growing grapes to make wine, but we also farm over 1,000 peach trees, or I should say stone fruit trees, because it's peaches, plums, nectarines, pluots, apples. We farm those. We use those peaches come to the winery, and or many of them come here for Chef Todd to use and incorporate it into our food and wine pairings, which is great. I mean, in peaches alone, we have over 60 varieties of peaches.
And it looks like you have chickens too.
We have chickens. We provide eggs as well.
Oh my gosh!
We also provide this produce to local restaurants. So if local restaurants want this farm fresh produce, they can buy that from us, which we provide that. So we try to be that diversified farm. Try to take on a little bit of that old world feel. With Napa Green, so we try to eliminate synthetic materials and try to maintain natural materials. And at the end of the day, we're a winemaker and we're trying to make the best wine we can by using those products from those vineyards.
Yeah, and taking such good care of your land wherever it is.
Yeah. That's the goal. So that.
My gosh! I don't think I realized. I mean, I didn't realize the extent of what you guys were doing at that ranch. And holy cow, this vineyard ATV ride is going to be a little longer than planned.
Yes. It's a pretty cool thing. Listen, I'm fortunate. I get to spend a lot of time out there. I even put my boat on the lake and go and float the lake and catch fish. I catch and release. But it's fun.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I can't believe there's a boat. Yeah, this lake sounds spectacular. So we did get a good question that I forgot to ask you about, which was on my to-do list. One of our viewers is wondering how this 2017 Dollarhide is looking. And then let's also talk about this upcoming vintage, because you will be harvesting any day now.
So when you say 2017, are they asking about Dollarhide Cabernet or?
Good question. Yeah, that is a good question. What would you like to know, Jules? The Dollarhide Sauv or the Cabernet?
So I'll tell you the 2017, probably talking about Cabernet, but the 2017 is a good vintage. It's not as structured as what the 18s will be when they get there. It's not as structured as the 16s were, but it's more powerful than, say, the 15s were. Quite interesting wine. But, as I say, because we are an estate and we farm in a consistent fashion, your wines have less variability, other than the fact that, like you say, you're right, there is vintage variation because that is the date stamp and the story for the season. But the 17s are pretty good wines. They're pretty solid wines. Little slightly warmer in the vintage field, so you have a little more red fruit in the wines, in the red wines, that is, than maybe some of the slightly more mild vintages. But pretty good vintage, I've got to say.
So I assume that hasn't been released yet. So when do you guys release that?
Oh, you won't see the 17s for another. Let me think. We'll have one wine, a 17, which we normally release a little younger, that is probably out now, but the rest of them vineyard designate 17s may be a year or so out, or 9 months out.
So they only have to wait a year. Okay, good.
Yeah. Cool. Indeed.
Yeah. Well, so anything so you've been at St. Supery. I also want to revisit something. You've been there a while. How many vintages have you made?
Emily, you're going to make me look old now.
Oh, no, you're not old at all. I'm just saying you're a very experienced, seasoned winemaker.
Supery in 1996, and then I moved on from I skipped out of St. Supery for a little while. Then was fortunate enough to get an invitation back. I came back in 2009. How many vintages I spent at St. Supery? I've actually been involved in developing most of the St. Supery portfolio over my time here, which has been phenomenal, because obviously I love the style. I love Sauvignon Blanc, I love Cabernet or Bordeaux blends, and that's what we do here.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the number of vintages I've done here, so 11 plus about 18.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're not going to be able to answer this. I just want to ask. I'm going to provoke you, see if you will answer. Of those 18 vintages, any favorites or any like stars that, like, if someone was to try just one vintage of the 18, what would it be?
Multifaceted question. Interesting.
I know.
Look, the most famous vintage back in the day was 1997.
Okay.
They were very, very impressive wines, and they still are impressive wines. In fact, I opened in 1997 just a couple of weeks ago.
And the 98, you've had a good couple of weeks.
I had a good couple of weeks, indeed. So, and the 97s are impressive. In the day, what's very super interesting about vintages in the day, the 1998s were considered to be a poor vintage. But if you open a 1998 today, it is remarkable how good those wines are today.
Great.
And that's not just not me saying that. It's been mirrored by other winemakers that say the same thing. Interesting. More recently, the 1999s were good. Even more recent than that.
Oh my gosh, we can't go through them all. This is what I say to my parents. Like they pretend they don't have favorites. I'm like, come on, like if you had to pick one. So if you could drink one of the vintages, it would maybe be a 97. Is that what I'm hearing? Maybe. Well, it makes sense. It's also aged the longest, so it's probably the most interesting and complex.
97's pretty good. I like the 99s too, though.
Okay.
They're different. They're different, though. So you're going to try and nail me down, Emily. You're going to struggle to nail me down on that.
Pardon?
I said, you're going to try to nail me down on this, but it'll be a struggle.
Yeah. Well, I think tasting old wines, I've been to some really cool media events. I feel like wineries, you guys are very generous with media, sharing old wines with us at like very old verticals. And you don't get to drink them as much. So sometimes I'm like, am I supposed to like it just because it's old? And then when you have like 6 back-to-back that are like, 70s, 80s, and then I'm like sometimes I don't always like the oldest one. Maybe it tastes like too old and it's like past its peak. But I think that would be another question or another tip that winemakers could give. Like, how the heck do you know what's good in an old wine? Because like a new wine drinks so different than an old Cabernet.
Sometimes I think when we do a vertical, it's always interesting from a winemaker perspective. But sometimes I think it's a good idea to take that old wine, just one of them, and sit down and enjoy it over a period of time. Because what they do is they'll evolve in the glass in front of you as you go along, and that evolvement is interesting. Is very interesting, and gives you a greater appreciation for drinking that old wine. Yeah. So if you have a quick sip on one moment, that's interesting. But it's not nearly as impressive as sitting at a table enjoying it over an hour or two. Yeah.
Well, we are going to be enjoying, we only have 40 seconds left. I'm going to be enjoying your wines this evening over a few hours. And just like the rosé evolved, I'm sure they will also evolve and get more and more interesting and delicious. But before we get cut off, I just want to thank you so much for your time and all of your insight and knowledge, and of course your beautiful wines. This has been such a pleasure and so serendipitous after harvesting with you 4 years ago. I think I'm overdue for a visit.
I know, absolutely. You should come and see us. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate you having us, and let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
Stay safe.
Yes, I want a mask. I want a mask for the ranch visit. Those are so cute.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Indeed.
Okay, well, thanks again. Enjoy your weekend. And yeah, I'll see you up in Napa.